All right, everybody, so welcome back to another episode of Colton Posey Fishing. So today we're going to be talking about a subject that some people may be familiar with and some people may not be familiar with. You know, we got some of us who go out there and we got this game plan. We're going to follow through with the game plan. We've got other guys, which are kind of like me, and you just kind of like, I'm going to wing it. We're just going to see what happens, and I'm going to throw a multitude of different baits, and you know, I'll figure something out as I'm there. You know, as the day progresses. Sometimes you do and sometimes you don't, is what it is. But you know, either way, don't forget, if you like this kind of content, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. If you ever have any questions or you just want to talk fishing, drop a comment down below. I love hearing from you guys. So stay tuned, it's something you don't want to miss. All right, guys, so junk fishing. What is junk fishing? Junk fishing is kind of one of those styles where you just kind of go to the lake or the river system, whatever you prefer to fish, and you're just kind of going to wing it. You don't really have a, you know, set game plan. You're fishing stuff that look good, but you're trying to figure out a pattern, but sometimes it doesn't work out. You just don't put the puzzle pieces together, whatever the case may be. But you know, you're just kind of throwing different baits at different things all day long, and you're looking for just however many bites you can get. And that's one of the style of fishing that I grew up doing. I wasn't, when I grew up, I never was taught like, hey, you know, we got bit here, we got bit here, we got bit here, so we need to focus on areas like this. It's kind of just something that I developed as I got older. You know, some people were taught that way, and some people just ain't, you know. I mean, we just kind of went to have fun and catch as many fish as we could, so we weren't really focused on stuff like that. But you know, as I got older and got into tournament fishing and stuff like that several years ago, you know, I kind of started really realizing how to put puzzle pieces together, and I really noticed that there is just some days where no matter what I do, I don't know if even if they slapped me in the head and told me, whispered in my ear exactly what they were doing, sometimes I just can't figure out what the fish are doing or what they're on. I catch them on multiple different things, and you may have days like that also. I'm sure somebody does. But either way, let's talk about some baits that I use for junk fishing and where I'm typically gonna throw those baits, my mind process during that time. So just setting up a scenario, let's just say I'm going to the lake today, right? Let's just say I was going today. We got bluebird sunny skies. We just had a ton of wind, ton of snow, stuff still melting. We got water rushing in and stuff like that. You know, what am I typically going to be throwing or go for, you know, starting out? Most of the time, stuff starts melting or rain or anything like that comes in. We got water coming into the lake. That's the first thing I'm going to check is run-ins and stuff. And depending on the depth, 99% of the time, I'm going to use something like a crankbait. And one of the things is with crankbaits, I've realized that I can just cover a lot of water. And I may go over a lot of fish. I'm not sure. I could give you a more accurate number if I paid attention to my active target, but I really don't pay attention to it that much. I mainly use it to find, like, to stay 100 feet off of like drop-offs or something that I'm trying to fish. I scan around with it a little bit, and sometimes I catch fish with it, but you know, I don't pay attention to it probably near as much as I should, because I could probably get a little bit more data for you guys, a little bit more data for me. But you know, either way, let's say I'm fishing run-ins that has a lot of brush or sticks or, you know, some rocks around it or something like that. I'm typically going to go with that flat-sided crankbait, just see if I can get those fish active. If I can get bit on one thing that I feel comfortable with, that's going to be a crankbait. Now, here's the thing. Let's say I'm fishing it and I'm not really getting bit. There's no fish there. I'm just using the wrong bait, and maybe I figure something out with the bait, but as I'm going to leave, wherever I'm going, wherever I'm fishing to or from, I'm typically going to be throwing that crankbait, okay? Because I can cover a lot of water. I can cover it kind of quickly. I mean, it's winter. You know, you're not going to be burning that bait or anything like that. But I can cover a lot of water quicker and try to eliminate fish that may be A, inactive, or B, they're just not wanting anything. They're just lethargic. They ate earlier, just something, okay? But I can, you know, kind of fast forward that process to finding those fish that are hungry. Maybe they just want one small meal. I don't know, but finding fish that will actually, you know, try to eat something. Let's say we use that crankbait and we didn't really get bit at that run-in, and, you know, kind of moving the process further down before I leave, you know, that's typically when I'm going to pick up something like that football head jig, okay? This is one of my absolute favorite baits during the winter. Football head jig with a grub trailer. whatever, or pork chunk, whatever you prefer to use. But you know, some type of jig bait. I'm typically going to go with that rubber skirt, and here's why. It does have more action, okay, than the silicone skirts and stuff like that, but I'm working that jig a little different. If you haven't checked out my jig fishing video, I explain it all, but just, you know, going over a simple conclusion of what I do, I'm dragging that bait and reeling at the same time, super slow, okay? Just that one whole process the entire time with that jig, so it's constantly moving. So that skirt's not going wild or anything, but it is moving, okay? Kind of slowly and stuff like that. I've just had a lot of good luck doing that. But, you know, I wasn't getting bit on that crankbait at that run-in, so I'm going to swap to that jig and target, you know, little isolated pieces that I may feel on the bottom or that I may see with my eyes, and then just keep moving, whether I get bit or I don't. But now, let's say, you know, I show up. Now, I'm not getting bit at the run-ins. I'm not getting bit, you know, kind of like the in-betweens or anything like that. First thing I'm going to go, main lake points. 99% of the time, there's going to be fish on your main lake points year-round, just like in the creeks. There's going to be fish in the creeks year-round. There's fish that live on the main lake, die on the main lake. There's fish same way in the creeks. They live in the creeks and they die in the creeks. That's all they do. And, you know, I'm going to be throwing something. Sorry, I got a tangled up mess here. I'm gonna be throwing something like that swim bait. I really like that 3.75 inch Rage swimmer this time of year. I'm gonna be throwing that swim bait, making super long casts across these points, on the sides of the points, in the middle of the points. This is one thing that I see a lot of people mess up on when you're fishing points. They're typically out at the tip of the point and they're throwing to the center of the point towards the bank and then bringing that bait out. You know, sometimes you're going to catch fish like that and sometimes you're not. Sometimes simple little changes to the way you present your bait can make a world of difference. There's a little technique that I like to do. My uncle got to see it firsthand when we went to Smith Lake. We were around fish and we saw tons of fish just following our bait. Could not get the fish to commit. He said, "What are we going to do?" I said, "I don't know exactly, but we're going to try something a little crazy." So I took my boat, and this was several years ago, but I took my boat and I put it basically right up against the bank, almost to where my trolling motor was dragging the ground. And we started throwing our crankbaits out towards the middle and bringing them to the boat, just like we were bank fishing. And I don't know how many fish we caught that day, but we were tired by the time we left. So, you know, fish the sides of your points, fish the ends of your points, go cross, you know, make it look like a tic-tac-toe table that somebody's done played on that same table for 3 years or something. You know, throw different directions, get an idea, you know, which way those fish want it. You start catching fish and it's coming a certain way, swap, you know, move around, do something a little different while you're right there. You may figure out another way that they want that bait presented. But, you know, that swim bait, I'm typically going to throw that a lot of times on those main lake areas. Anything that's like just super flat, long, anything, suspended fish, doesn't really matter. I can keep that bait in that strike zone for a long period of time, you know, without sacrificing anything, whether that's bites or whatever the case may be. Now, let's just say I'm throwing that swim bait on those main lake points, or, you know, those deep bluff walls or something, like the big channel swings that's just straight down. And I'm not really getting that many bites, but I'm getting some follows, or maybe I'm getting some bumps, can't really get them to react. That's typically, especially if those fish are deeper, there's a couple different, I guess you could say, techniques to it, but you know, I'm gonna go with that jerk bait. So I'm typically gonna be throwing the slash this time of year. Now this is the slash 110 double deep. Okay, so this one's gonna go around that 18-foot range max. Maybe go a little deeper, I'm not sure. 18 foot's about as deep as I've got it, but either way, you know, if I'm throwing that swim bait to those fish that are in that 25, 30-foot range and I'm not really getting bit with it, maybe I'm, you know, hanging that swim bait around that same area that the shad are, whether that's 15, 16, 17, 18 foot, whatever the case may be, and I'm just not getting those reactions, that's typically when I'm going to go with that jerk bait, because it's something that I can move, pop, 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 pause, and let that bait soak for however long. Now, one of the things I can say with deep diving jerk baits, you want to make a super long cast way past wherever you're trying to target, and then reel that bait down. I usually say about 10, you know, with the deep diving crankbait, about 10 reel cranks, rod tip in the water, 10 reel cranks, that bait's going to get close to about 10 foot, and then you can work it from there. Sometimes it may go a little deeper. I'm not sure. It's probably got a lot to do with your line diameter and stuff like that, density of the water. But you know, I want that bait suspended in their face, or either I want it kind of sinking real slow. So you know, you can put strips or whatever you want to do, and just remember, depending on the density of the water, just because a company says like, hey, my bait sinks, or my bait floats, or my bait suspends, it may not, depending on the density of the water. So make sure when you're choosing your jerk baits and stuff like that, you're paying attention to what it's doing. But either way, you know, getting this bait in those areas to where I'm getting those short strikes on those deeper points, deeper channel swings, whatever the case may be, and being able to pause that bait in their face is typically going to cause a lot of reaction strikes. You're going to notice a lot of your strikes are going to come from that initial pause for a long period of time, and then the initial pop right afterwards. You typically, you know, like me, a lot of times I may think, hey, I'm gonna pop it a couple times, and I just do that first initial pop, and then they got it. So, but you know, multiple different areas you can cover. Now, let's say we're fishing that maybe the areas we're fishing on the main lake is clear, right? It's kind of clean, it's kind of clear. I can see a long ways down, and nothing's really happening. Nothing's really happening. I can see fish, they're just acting lethargic. They're acting weird. They just act like they don't want to eat anything. They got lockjaw or something's wrong with them. So what am I gonna do? I'm gonna look for those areas, creeks, where we have dirtier water. And this is where a lot of times winter fishing can get extremely fun because it's good and it's bad because it'll get you excited for spring, but spring's still a pretty good ways out. So, you know, it kind of hurts your feelings a little bit. But I'm going to go into creeks where maybe there's a big creek at the back, or multiple little feeder creeks inside that creek, or whatever the case may be. And that water's muddied up. That water's dirty. It's warmer, it's dirty. There's a lot of brush, grass, whatever you like to fish, which right now the grass would be dead, but you get what I'm saying. I'm typically going to be throwing double willow spinner, or double Colorado spinnerbait. I'm sorry. This has been one of my go-to for years when it comes to winter fishing. Now, you've heard me talk about jigs, how I like throwing 3 8-ounce jigs over, you know, 1/2 ounce, 3/4 ounce, 1 ounce jigs, whatever the case may be. And I like doing that with my double Colorado. Now, I typically choose the Booyah this time of year. Why? Because most of the other brands, they just have bigger blades, bigger Colorado blades on their 3 8-ounce spinnerbaits, and I don't necessarily want all that thump because I'm using this bait kind of like a pitching bait. And don't get me wrong when I say that, when I say like I'm pitching and flipping, I don't mean like I got my boat right next to the log and I'm pitching that bait, you know, 2 foot in front of me, and I got that bait just back and forth. I'm not doing that. Staying 6, well, it kind of depends on, you know, the depth and stuff like that, but I'm typically going to stay like 10 foot away from whatever I'm fishing, whether that's brush piles, sticking up off the bank, rocks, anything like that, whatever zone that I'm targeting. And I'm going to be throwing that bait multiple times to those pieces of cover. So I roll up, there's a tree right there. I'm going to make 7 to 8 casts with that spinnerbait, slowly bringing it each side around it, whatever I can, then I'm moving on. Next spot, next spot, next spot, just like that. And it's kind of precision targeting that bait in different areas around that piece of structure or cover that you're fishing, and you can just catch a lot of fish doing that. You're going to spend a lot of time, but a lot of times you can just get a lot of bites. And sometimes you'll find, like one year we got into one, and it wasn't that big of a tree. I don't know. It was probably, the whole tree itself, like the brush that was in the water was probably about the size of the front of my boat here. So it wasn't massive, but it was, you know, just a good, decent, dead tree that had fell in the water. We probably caught 40 or 50 fish out of that area. So, spinnerbait, just wide open. So, you know, there's multiple techniques to junk fishing. You can kind of fish with whatever you want, whatever baits you're comfortable with, whether that's an underspin, Ned rig, Texas rig worm, it doesn't matter. But the thing is why am I doing that? Because I'm trying to figure out something going on. I'm trying to figure out that pattern, or, you know, I may have, you know, that time where I go out there, like we fished the run-in, right? We were talking about the run-in with the crankbait and the jig. I fish it. I catch a fish off the jig, okay? I go to another run-in, I catch a fish off the crankbait, no bites on the jig. I fish run-ins for a couple hours, no bites. Move out to the main lake, I catch one off a swim bait on a point, okay? No more bites. I, go to another point, run the swim bait, jerk bait, no bites. Go to that deep bluff wall, throw the jerk bait, start getting, I got, 1 or 2 fish in the boat, no more bites on it for an hour. Then I go in the creeks and I start flipping with, or pitching, flipping, power fishing with that spinnerbait, and I start catching a few fish. And that's just kind of like junk fishing in a bottle. I mean, you're just doing multiple things, different techniques. Go where your gut feeling. Like I tell everybody when you're fishing, no matter if you're watching my videos, somebody else's videos, whatever the case may be, I'm seeing something different. That if me and you are in the same boat and we're fishing together, you may notice something that I don't notice. I may notice something that you don't notice. And, it's just perspectives are different. So always go with your gut feeling. Here's the thing. It's okay to be wrong. It's okay to be wrong, okay? It's okay to be wrong. Because if you're wrong, you can learn something from it. And don't be afraid to go out on the lake and just have a hard time. Enjoy those hard times to the best of your ability. I mean, I understand it's not going to be a blast when you're having rough times out on the lake, but try to think of what you're doing wrong, what you could do different, what little puzzle pieces you could put together, or just say, today's just one of those days where my brain ain't working right. I'm just going to go fishing. I'm going to fish everything that looks good to me. It doesn't matter, stuff I've never fished before, whatever the case may be. And a lot of times you figure something out. Stay level-headed, guys. I really appreciate you stopping by. If the video helps you at all, make sure to like, subscribe for more content. It helps me out a whole lot. Comment down below if you have any questions or you just want to talk bass fishing. Love hearing from you guys. Everything will be linked down in the description. As always, see you next time.